Let's get into it. Podcasts are for losers. Those were the words of Howard Stern in the early 2000s. This is when Joe Rogan's podcast was just taking form. A lot of people were starting podcasts, and Howard Stern was feeling threatened. He started telling people that podcasts are for losers. Now, what I'm going to be playing for you is a clip of Joe Rogan. 5 clips. A clip of Joe Rogan talking about the evolution of him going from radio stations to podcasting and who influenced him. And they talk about Howard Stern getting threatened by podcasts. Then I'm going to be playing a clip of Ari Shaffir ranting about Howard Stern and how out of touch he is, which sparked Howard Stern in another clip that I'm going to play to respond to Ari Shaffir and just kind of go on a rant about how worthless podcasting is and how worthless Ari is. Then I'm going to be playing 2 clips for you that actually show why Joe Rogan and Howard Stern don't like each other. And maybe it's not that they don't like each other, but they definitely had a falling out after Howard Stern did this to Joe Rogan on his radio show. Sorry, Howard. No, not a podcast, radio show. And it's a pretty dirty thing he did to him. I got to be honest. Rogan used to be on that show quite a bit, and after this, never again. Do not forget about IamCoachColin.com. We got the Soul Not For Sale. We got the Public Enemy #1. And we have the Certified Pure Blood. All of that's available at IamCoachColin.com. Discount code is IamCoachColin. Let's get to this Rogan clip.
You know, those shows were like, I mean, again, I barely did them. I guess, like,
I did a lot of them.
Yeah, like, did you feel like you could be funny on there? You just had to be, right? It was just like,
I would show up lit.
Yeah.
Always. I never did those sober.
Just fucking high or
I'd
drunk.
be barbecued.
That's
just
awesome.
barbecued.
That's
just
hilarious,
not
dude.
knowing what I was talking about 15 seconds after I was talking. But this house was the most loose. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. Give me a big cup of coffee and a joint.
Let me go.
And let me go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's have some fun. And, you know, I've drank on the radio too, but that's hard, man, because then you go back to your hotel room and crash, and then you feel like shit at like 2 p.m.
Oh, fuck. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, because the show's got to come after.
Yeah.
That's the fucked up part.
Yeah, but if you're on a radio show and you're having fun, you got to go.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the advertisement to get people to come see you.
Right.
So you're fucking around, having a good time.
If you're crushing it, you got to stay on. Yeah.
Got to have a good time. But I always used to think, like, that would be the job, man. Have a fucking radio gig would be the job.
You figured it out.
I don't know what the fuck happened.
What are you talking about?
But it's like...
This is exactly that, except you don't have to fucking, you can talk about whatever the fuck you want. You know what I mean? You're
exactly.
In here.
That's why I never would have got one of those jobs. They would have said, hey, you can't talk about the pyramids again. Right. I'd be like, but hold on.
Come on, dude. There's no way those motherfuckers made them. It was a fucking alien beamed us the fucking knowledge.
Also, you would have executives.
Yeah.
You would have a bunch of fucking, like, they would have meetings with I was friends with Kevin and Bean in LA. That was like one of the last shows that I ever did. They were the last radio show that I would ever willingly do.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
they were your boys.
They were fun. They were good dudes. And, you know, when they got fired, man, they just got told they were fired and they weren't even allowed to go in the building to get their stuff.
Insane.
And they were there for like 25 years.
I mean, that's fucking brutal.
But that's how those corporations work, man.
Yeah.
Fuck you, pay me. Get out. It's a business. It's
yeah,
not
just bleed
art.
And they bled their industry dry, and that it kind of made way for independent stuff, independent pot. And it's like they thought they could do that because they were a monopoly, and then in 5 years it was like anybody could do their own show,
well, I remember when I first started talking about doing it, like radio guys were so dismissive.
Oh,
like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You know?
This is our thing.
Well, Howard Stern used to talk about it openly.
Yeah.
Like, these people are idiots. Like, what are you doing? Waste your time podcasting.
Yeah.
It's kind of hilarious.
It really is. But I mean, you also get it because of course it threatens them because it's like, yeah, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do the thing
I get it, but I don't get it because things that threaten me, I don't attack.
Right.
I embrace things that threaten me.
Well,
if there's something that threatens me, if there was something like a podcast, if like I was a radio host and podcasts were killing, I'd be like, I need to get a fucking podcast.
Right.
And I'd probably start talking openly about it to put pressure on my contract negotiations.
Right.
I'd be like, why don't I just get I have enough money. I have enough money.
Yeah.
Why do I have a boss? Why do I have a job? Why do I have shareholders? Why do I have stocks?
Well, do you think it's a little bit of like what happens when, like, it's not so much I mean, I guess it happens now too, where it's like if somebody gets big off purely TikTok, right? Or somebody does like funny videos and then they start selling out comedy clubs. Don't you think they looked at podcasters that way where they're like, they don't know how to be a radio guy? Like,
well, I mean,
because I feel that sometimes where I'm like, these fucking guys can't put together an act, or if whenever a celebrity gets canceled, now all of a sudden they're fucking comedians. You know what I mean? Or
right,
like,
that does happen.
That's what I'm saying. Is like
that's like actors, their last hope.
Right. Once you that's again back to what comedy is. Where comedy is, it's like, well, if you are a rapist, come on to the comedy club. You know what I mean? It's like that's how we're respected.
Well, like TikTok made Ralph Barboza, but I think he's gonna.
But he's a
make
good
it.
comic.
He's a good
That's the
comic.
difference.
But he was a middle act, and then
It's
all of a sudden
awesome.
he's like headlining and selling out 4, 5, 6 shows in a row.
But that's the thing. It's like, if you're like that, he's good. He's a good comic, and he works hard as fuck. Somebody who makes it off of the strength of their jokes is different from, like, let's say you do skits, or you're just or you're a personality,
right.
And like somebody like Drewski's really funny. That guy's hilarious, and he goes on the road and he does his own thing. He has his own show. He's not doing stand up. He's like taking the experience of what makes him good. But then you see other people who don't have that like imagination. They don't want to work hard and craft their own special live show, and they're like, I could do stand. Like the way we were talking about it.
Exactly.
Imagine if your friend who's not funny at all blows up because he puts a wig on and pretends to be a woman on TikTok. You know what I mean? I mean, not him. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. It's that. Yeah.
Just very, very rarely do I say it's never going to happen.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
this guy's
just
yeah.
But hypothetically, a guy like that, it happens, and they have no stage presence. They have nothing interesting about them, and all of a sudden, they can sell out a fucking improv for the weekend. And now, hopefully, organically, people will stop going to see them if they're bullshit. But
or they can figure it out. Like come up with something that they can do, maybe show video clips, maybe talk about things, have a projector behind them.
Yeah.
Somewhere they can juice it up.
Some bullshit.
Yeah, somewhere they can juice it up.
More often than not, though, I think if they figure it out, they become hacks. Because hack works. You know what I mean? Like that's why it's hack. It's
well, you know, Tom Green is a really good comic now. And Tom Green, you know, was doing movies and all that other stuff and sketches, the Tom Green Show, and now he's doing stand-up.
Well, he's a super imaginative, very, like, creative guy. Yeah. You know?
He's also super unique. He's also the main reason why I did this podcast.
The Tom Green Show?
Yeah.
That was awesome.
But
the online one.
His talk show that he did.
Yeah.
I remember I went to his house. It was like 2007. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, you got wires running through your living room. You had servers. I mean, he had, like, servers there and everything. Like, a whole room dedicated to hard drives and servers. He had some crazy internet connection. It was wild.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, you just got to figure out a way to monetize this. Like, this is it. This is the future. No executives. No one to tell you what to do. I think I started doing versions of, like, web shows after. And then the other one that got me into it was doing the Opie and Anthony show. Because it was such a hang.
Totally.
It was just a hang. There was no organization to it at all.
Yeah.
Bunch of funny guys,
People
Patrice
popping in
and
and out.
Voss and Norton and everyone just hanging out.
Yeah. Shitting on each other. That was the predecessor. That was like the.
That was the predecessor.
That was
of the
the
podcast.
thing. Yeah.
Especially when they went to XM and they were
you can
unfiltered.
say whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
It's so funny to hear the clips from when they were on terrestrial radio, and they're like, easy, Patrice, and they're like, oh wait, he can't say.
Yeah.
He can't say
anything.
Yeah. But it's fascinating. But yeah, I guess that's what the radio guys were thinking, you know. But I agree with you. You should try and understand what the fuck's going on, not like feel threatened.
Yeah. Well, I get why you would feel threatened. I just don't think it's productive.
Yeah.
It's just like, how's it going to help you to shit on something that is obviously killing it?
Once you're already successful, though, people get set in their fucking ways, and like, you know.
Yeah, well, especially if you're like a Howard Stern type dude. You're the biggest guy ever in radio, and then something's coming along that's taking over radio. Like, no way.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Although I will say, none of us have an awesome black midget that we bring on.
You couldn't anymore.
Beetlejuice rocks.
Imagine.
Oh man, if you don't know who Beetlejuice is, Howard Stern may have gone woke, but Beetlejuice never did. Oh gosh, Beetlejuice was the man. But you know what? You're going to hear it in this clip. Keep watching. I'm playing Ari Shaffir right now in a few seconds, and then it's going to be Howard Stern. And you got to understand, what you just heard from Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is at the, from what we can see, the pinnacle of his success. He is the biggest thing on broadcasting, online, on YouTube, on Spotify, on everything, basically. He is like the biggest thing. Mr. Beast is big, but he's big in a broadcasting sense, right? And that's what he has to say about people who are coming up, doing what he's doing in a different way. You know, people who are like me, who may start doing stand-up and sell out a small venue based on a YouTube channel versus based on, like, you know, hard-hitting jokes that I've been working on for years and months, right? So he's being very accepting. You know, they'll figure it out. They'll try something. Maybe they'll do a different thing. Maybe they'll pull up clips, this, that. That's what Joe has to say about people who could possibly threaten what he does in stand-up and even on his podcast. What you hear from Howard Stern is how he approaches being threatened. It's vastly different. And I have to say, I'm just going to say this right before I start this clip. I'm going to pull this clip up right now. But it's so funny that so many people who are old and famous that go woke are also the type of people who are willing to attack people and try to tear them down. I see that a lot. And I'm not saying I don't see it at all on the right, but I see it a lot in these left-leaning, woke identifying people, which Howard Stern is one of them. Let's get into Ari Shaffir right now. He has a lot to say.
He made a real Western.
You're upset with Howard Stern because he said that shit about podcasting.
That's the new thing I'm upset with Howard Stern over. It just shows what a fucking how much he's lost touch. Like, that's not the way you become a radio DJ. Stern, no one wants to become a radio DJ who's doing podcasts. That's not our end goal.
He might be doing that, though. He's a very clever guy. He might be doing that just to get people to talk shit.
I guess so. He said it's for losers. So that means anyone who listens to a podcast and listens to Howard Stern, just so you know, Howard Stern called you a loser for listening to podcasts as well. You got to know how to take it to an act break. What? No, you don't. You can just not go to an act break. What the fuck are you talking about? Take it back to the 30s.
I think he was trying to fuck with people.
Yeah.
I really do.
No, I think he doesn't like that. Where are you going to make your pennies? And he goes, Corolla shouldn't be in podcasts. He should be doing radio. It's like, oh, you just don't even know what it is. You're commenting on shit. You don't even know what it is.
I don't know, man. I hear that from a guy like that. He's too clever.
He was too clever.
I think he's probably, I don't know. I think he's probably fucking with people.
Dude,
at
he
the same
fucking
time,
does Dancing with the Stars.
People.
What is that, a prank?
I don't think it's Dancing with the Stars. America's Got Talent.
Whatever,
He
some
likes
garbage show.
He likes it. He likes giving people when he talks about it, it genuinely seems like he's enjoying it. Giving people the opportunity. Like some of those people that come out of that show are actually really talented.
It's cool jugglers and stuff.
I don't know. I've never watched it.
What do you do in that show for?
Well, Tom Cotter, stand-up comic. He's the guy that I came up with in Boston, like way back in the day.
Hold on a second. And you should know, but I don't know Tom Cotter at all. But there's no way you're going to defend that show by saying Tom fucking Cotter. He's been fucking shitty since '84.
How dare
There's
you.
no way you're going to say that as an example of something good coming out of that show. The fucking cool dancers. Yeah, I'll give you that. That's cool. How do you do that
I
with
like
your body?
Tom Cotter. I can't say any bad word.
No, you
about
can't because you know him and like him, but I can because I've never met him.
He's a beautiful human being.
Even when I was a little kid watching
he's a
Live
funny
from the
comic.
Laugh Factory from Saturday night, I was like, who's this fucking cheeseball host?
How dare you?
Get to the amazing Jonathan.
How dare you? How dare you? Ari Shaffir, you give him a TV show, the motherfucker goes on a rampage. Balls out. It's attacking Howard Stern, attacking
guy's lost
Tom
touch.
Cotter.
When's the last time he broke a real musician anymore?
I don't think he ever did that.
He did.
Did he really?
Yeah. Bands like Soul Coughing, I remember discovering them through Howard Stern. Like, oh, this is a good band. You're right, Stern.
Oh,
He
it's
would
like
listen
he
to
would
rock
talk about
music,
them.
but now he's fucking 104. And 104-year-olds don't have their finger on the pulse.
I don't think he's that old.
That's why the guy from Saturday Night Live, he just like, well, hire young black people. Just hire somebody that is young.
Well, I think, honestly, this is my take on it. I want to be completely objective.
Yeah.
I think what he's doing is what he enjoys.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
it.
who he is now.
Mm-hmm.
This is who he is now. We can't want a guy to be who we thought he was or who he used to be.
Dude, there's nothing. Comedians, athletes, musicians, no one keeps up at the high level they perform at all the time. They fade.
But this is where I think you're wrong because Stern has really good interviews. They're really good.
Still, new ones?
Very good.
Okay.
Very,
Well, then
he
he's
just
good at
did one with
interviewing.
Kid Rock. He's very good.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the very best ever
At interviewing.
At like getting
And it was a
people to
new
talk
one that was
about
good.
You know what? I would agree with that, right? I would agree with what he said. And listen, Ari Shaffir goes on longer and longer and longer throughout that podcast, but that is not available on YouTube. This is like a very, very early. This is back in when he had Jimi Hendrix behind him and Elvis behind him. This is old school Rogan here, and it's in the early 2000s because this is around the time Howard Stern said all these things. But he is right. At one point, Howard Stern, I remember being just working in a grocery store. I was a young person walking in through the grocery store, and I'm Googling, because I figured out how this Google thing works, and I'm Googling who the greatest interviewers in the world. And Howard Stern was at the top of that list, and Joe Rogan was like near the bottom of that list at the time because people didn't know about Joe Rogan back then. And I remember listening to every single interview that Howard Stern ever did because I wanted to be an interviewer. I wanted to do this broadcast thing. And his interviews were incredible, absolutely incredible. He got Madonna to tell him all sorts of stuff. Samuel L. Jackson, John Goodman revealed that he was an alcoholic on the Howard Stern show, just like an active alcoholic, and how he was going through it and he was so depressed. Howard Stern has done some incredible, incredible interviews, and I wish he just stayed in that pocket. But around, I don't know, years into it, he just started becoming different. And I think somebody said it really well. At one point, he used to push away from Hollywood, and he didn't care what Hollywood or anybody thought about him. And around the time he started doing that show, America's Got Talent, he started wanting Hollywood to like him. He started wanting the industry to embrace him. And in doing that, he started having to toe the line, and then he had to start following the narratives, and his legacy fell apart, in my opinion. Now we're going to hear Howard Stern give his take on Ari Shaffir and podcasters at large. This is going to hurt my feelings. Let's go.
Oh, I'm back. I got tape from Joe Rogan's podcast. He had a comedian on there who was bashing me the other night.
Oh.
I'll play that for you later. A guy I never heard of who basically is angry with me because I said that podcasts are bullshit. And he, of course, misses the point. He's a 41-year-old comedian I've never heard of, nor has anyone else. And he's dicking around with some podcast, and he's hurt that I said that podcasts are no good. Podcasts are fine. You want to make a podcast, sit in your room and make a podcast. You want to make money and become a broadcaster and actually get a following. You've got to put yourself to the test. If you want to be a comedian, you could sit in your room and do your comedy into a microphone, or you could go to a club.
Yeah, you could be the greatest comedian ever, only nobody would know it.
Right. You got to go to a club, and I'm telling you, if you want to become a radio broadcaster and make a living at this and get a following, you've got to go on terrestrial radio, not even satellite. You got to go on terrestrial radio and wait for the ratings book to come out, and you'll find out if you're any good. And this guy was peeing and crying and pissing and moaning because he's 41 and he never had a fucking career. And he's, and Joe was nice. He was like, saying, hey, Howard's a great broadcaster. Why don't you listen to what he's saying? Or something like that, to that effect. But JD was playing me the tape. He's going to pull the tape for later. I almost hesitate to play because you're
going to make him known.
I'll make the guy known. It'll be
and
the first
his podcast will get some traction.
And then he went through the traditional, Howard's old, and he, well, good, I'm old. Guess what? I've learned a few things in my life. If I had to make a career today and I made a podcast, nobody would know who I was. And that ain't being old, that's just the truth. You got to go to a market like Hartford, Connecticut, and beg someone to put you on the air, because don't think that's easy either. You got to go through 1 million auditions. But Riley has a podcast, and everybody and his mother has a podcast, and none of them know how to broadcast. I don't mean to single out Riley. I actually like his show, but I'm just saying. The only way you will... that's like a stand-up comedian sitting in his room the rest of his life doing stand-up comedy. How come he doesn't do that? He would tell a young kid, what would you tell a young kid who wanted to be in comedy? Would you tell him to sit and do a fucking podcast, or would you tell him to go to a comedy club? You tell him to go to a goddamn comedy club, because then a live audience will sit there and they will be your harshest critic. And if you can make them laugh, you're a comedian. And if you can't, you're shit. You're nothing. And if you sit in your room and do a podcast, you're pretending to be a broadcaster. Take the podcast and throw it out the window. The guy's crying, Howard is old. He doesn't know the business. He's just old. Yeah, I'm old. So what? You're going to be old, too. In fact, you're 41 and no one's heard of you.
That's not that young.
When I was 41, I was super fucking famous. I was already I had written books and made a movie of my life. I mean, you're 41 and you're on Joe's podcast and no one knows who you are and no one's going to hear you. This guy, it's like a street performer giving advice to Paul McCartney. Guy's a fucking moron. And you know what? Guys who are unsuccessful hate to hear the truth. They hate to hear it. You mean we actually have to work? I mean, can't we just go in our room and be our own boss and make a podcast?
Well, that's like all those people who used to be on cable access.
Yeah.
They thought they were
on TV.
television.
They would pay a company to put my TV. Hey, look, I'm on TV. No, you're not on TV. I mean, yeah, you're on TV, but nobody gives a shit about you. Howard's old. He doesn't understand podcasting. No, I understand it perfectly. It's fun. You want a podcast? Great. So you have some audio on your website that nobody goes to. I should invite the guy on and just fucking yell at him. Yeah, I guess I guess you would tell the young comics to sit at home and do stand up in their house.
Well, how could we tell he's a comedian?
But I never heard of the guy. What's the guy's name? We'll give him a plug. Ari
Shaffir.
Ari Shaffir. Have you heard of him?
No, Shaffir.
Shaffir.
Have you heard of Ari Shaffir?
No.
He's on with Joe Rogan acting like he's some sort of elder statesman of comedy. Fucking moron. And he's like, Howard's old. Yeah, guess what? So are you. You're 41, and you haven't no one knows your name, and you've been at it. You give it up. I guess he does stand-up on a podcast, and then he doesn't have to go to the clubs, because that's the way to make a living in stand-up.
But the question is, why does he care about your opinion?
Because...
if everything's working for him in podcasting...
Yeah. And then he went on to say that AGT is a bullshit show. Dude, what show are you on, besides your podcast?
Man, I love Howard, man. I really do. He's gone woke and everything, and he has a terrible take on podcasting, obviously. But I still love that. I love hearing him rant on people, man. It was always great. I remember listening to this guy when I was a kid, going to school. My mom would listen to Howard Stern because she kind of exposed me to like whatever she was watching. So, yeah. Oh man, but yeah, he miscalled this. And again, like Rogan said in the first clip, it's because he got threatened by the whole thing. And it is a threatening thing. For all of a sudden, people to be able to go on YouTube and go on Apple and go on all these platforms and just start uploading things and just be like, here's the show, and do well and make money. It's like he had to fight tooth and nail for like 20 years just to get known. And then from there, he had to push the envelope, and he got fines and sued and like all these things just for swearing and just for the things he would say. He had to fight. He fought hard. But the thing that I guess he didn't realize is what he was fighting for and how much he was pushing the envelope only gave podcasts steam. It only made sense that podcasts would happen because how many people were going to fight through all of that? You know, the envelope hadn't been pushed far enough. People weren't, I should say, radio stations weren't open to having a podcast about, you know, name a thing that you say, this. No radio station's open to this. Are you kidding me? Come on. I might speak well, but nobody's doing this. I don't talk about like, you know, I'm not talking about what's going on with P. Diddy and all this stuff. I don't do that. So it's like, I don't know. I'm not doing current events. I'm not E-News over here. I'm not like that. I don't know. Black Tucker Carlson here. You know what I mean? Mixed with a little bit of Rogan. Now, let's get into what actually happened between them. Now, it's hard to find Howard Stern stuff on the internet because he actually wants it scrubbed from YouTube because of how much he hates podcasts and whatnot. But people have found the clip. So this is Howard Stern bringing on a girl that Joe Rogan had slept with while Joe Rogan's on the podcast, and Joe Rogan did not know this was going to happen. So let me play this for you real quick.
Yeah, Joe's weird. Like,
He definitely has a difficult time.
I've gone to strip clubs with him, and he's like, "Get out of here, you whore."
In the meantime, Howard tried to manufacture even more embarrassment by inviting a girl Joe had been with in the past to sabotage his reputation further.
He was my first one-night stand.
You're kidding.
It wasn't
really a one-night stand. It was like a trailer. By the way, you were Joe's 350th one-night stand.
That's fine. I learned a lot
Where
from
did you meet Joe? You learned a lot from him?
Yeah.
Sweet.
So
what did you
after
learn
that-
from Joe?
Well, after that wonderful one-night stand, I got pregnant, and I...
What?
Yeah.
What? What?
Joe, you knocked her up?
Are you kidding? Did you know that?
Okay, but
How old's your son?
I never kept it.
Thank you, Jesus.
Wait a minute.
So that ended up happening. Joe Rogan was not made aware of this. And then Howard did it again. He did it again with an actual... Now, that was just some random chick that Joe didn't remember, and it could have been made up and this and that. But this was an actual ex-girlfriend that Joe Rogan knew, and she was on the show, and they were talking, and she claims that she was cheated on. And this is where Joe Rogan has just had enough. He's like, I can't believe that you're doing this to me. Like, you know, we've been friends. I've been on your show so many times. And for some reason, you keep on bringing up these women and you keep on painting this narrative that I hate women. That's what he was doing to Joe, just making it seem like Joe Rogan hated women. So let me play this for you real quick.
Did he cheat on you? He did. Yeah.
Joe, what is your problem?
Did you think you had an exclusive relationship with him at the time?
This is on the radio for the world.
I did.
You did. Joe.
You're going
How did
hard
you
on
find
me,
out?
Joe, let me ask you. I mean,
Hey, enough.
why cheat on her? Why not be honest?
You know what? We used to have huge fights, and then I would.
Yeah, but why the cheating?
And having grown
So that was a real segment that really happened. Like, yeah, and Joe was angry after that, and Joe decided, I am never going to be on the Howard Stern show again. And he just kind of pulled back, and he actually was on record saying on his podcast that he's like, he was on another person's radio show. He was like, I don't want any problems with Howard. I'm just gonna keep a distance. You know, we're still good, but I'm just going to not go on that show anymore. And then Howard Stern made a few more episodes talking a lot about Joe. And, you know, Joe obviously didn't want any issues with Howard Stern because he was Howard Stern at the time. Joe Rogan had barely even formed his podcast. He was still sitting on the gray. I think at that point he either didn't even start the podcast yet, or he was still like not even at episode 100 yet, still doing Ustream type of stuff, you know? So he didn't want any problems with the biggest media guy in the world, right? So he was just kind of like, let me just pull back, not say anything, and just keep it at that, do my comedy, do my little podcast with Brian Redband, and just leave it at that. And that is what led to them falling out. So when Joe Rogan, someone that Howard Stern already had this type of issue with, started making a podcast, that was one of the reasons why Howard Stern was like, podcasts are for losers. It was just this way of like kind of going at Joe again, and also going at the rest of the people who had podcasts, because they were popping up all over the place. So yeah, Howard Stern and Joe Rogan do not like each other. I would love to one day see Howard Stern on Joe Rogan's podcast, but Howard Stern has decided that, you know, podcasts are for losers and he will never be on one. And nowadays, Howard Stern is woke. He is legit woke. I'm not saying that. I'm not making that up. He has gone on record saying that he's woke. Like, this is, let me flip over here. So if you can see it here, Howard Stern tells critics who say he's woke now that I'm anti-Trump, pro the jab, supports transgender people. I am woke, MFer. And, you know, all the power to him. It's great that he is in that stance, I guess. Howard hits back. He says, I am woke. So he pretty much just went on this rant of just like, I am woke. So what? And again, it goes back to what I was saying about how he was pushing for the Hollywood elite people to start embracing him. He also went on record saying that when he passes away, he wants everything he's done on radio to be destroyed. He has it all. He has ownership of it all. He wants it all to be destroyed. So he's fully embraced the narrative. Sad to see, because honestly, again, he is one of the absolute greats. Great interviewer, great radio personality, always pushed the envelope, and it goes back to that old thing. What do they say in Batman? You live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Yeah, well, he lived long enough for himself to, you know, become woke. Sadly. But I mean, to each their own. You live, you evolve. Sometimes your evolution takes an odd turn of events, and that's where we are with Howard Stern. But because of Howard Stern, we have people like Joe Rogan. We have things like this. We have things like any other podcast that you listen to. Howard Stern really was one of those people that pushed so hard and triggered everyone in society to realize, oh, I do want to hear a show that just talks about whatever. I do want to hear a show that swears as much as possible. I do want to hear a show that says absolutely wild things. I do want to see a show that shows women doing XYZ. Like, I want a show that's wild. And it birthed podcasts. So thank God for him. That woke MFer. Anyways, guys, like the episode, subscribe to the podcast. It helps so much. And hit up IamCoachColin.com. And other than that, I'm out.